It seems so cliche to start by saying I don't believe in ghosts, but however, that's where I'm coming from. A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment, and it was my first time that I was living on my own. So the apartment block had been built in the 1930s, and I'd been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange. The wooden board covering a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space lay broken in two pieces on the ground. I examined the broken pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken a Bruce Lee-type person to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought, someone is up there for sure. So later on that night, I emailed the pictures to the landlord asking if anyone had been there, of course with an undertone of annoyance since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you're able to." So I called, and she explained that her last two tenants had the same thing happen. She promised to replace the board, and of course she did. About a month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m., and I had so many goosebumps, it felt like someone was rubbing his or hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard this sound coming from above my bed. It was a dragging sound, like someone pulling a sack of potatoes. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought, someone is up there for sure, but there's no way an animal can make that sound. After 5 minutes, I managed to work up the courage to turn on the light and walk to the bathroom. I was armed with a baseball bat, of course. When I looked, I saw the new board covering the hole was broken in two again. I felt sick to my stomach. The dragging sound had stopped, but then I heard something else. Whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and all I could hear was one sentence repeated over and over again. "It's your turn. It's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was 5 a.m., and it was dark outside. So I decided to watch TV to try and unwind. Then, a fuse blew. So my pet Budgie Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, he usually never made a sound at night, but he started to squawk like he was being strangled. I'd never heard them make those noises before. He was basically screaming. So I grabbed my car keys, ran out, and sat in my car and waited till the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back inside. The front door was open, but I thought I hadn't closed it when I ran outside. So I went into the kitchen to check on Dexter, and he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked into the bathroom, I heard a splashing. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out, washed him up, and dried him off. I was so confused. I had no idea what was happening. So around 8 o'clock in the morning, I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. And her reply was, "Oh wow, you heard the whispering too?" So I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months, almost 2 years. I did hear the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling had moved. Although now I live elsewhere, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on there. I thought to myself, forget it. It's their problem now. When I was about 16 years old, I was riding horses with my friend in the field beside her house. The horse threw me, and I hit my head. I hit my head very, very hard. The next thing I know, I'm on my back in incredible pain, staring up at my friend. She's frantically screaming at me, dazed. My gaze shifted and refocused on her friend behind her. He was a tall, thin man, wearing a black suit and an old-fashioned, wide-brimmed hat, long white hair, yellowish-colored teeth, and he was staring at me, unblinking, into my eyes, over my friend's shoulder. Days later, she came to visit me in the hospital, and I decided to ask her about the man I'd seen. I thought it was the new boyfriend that she recently told me about, which was strange because he seemed like he was a lot older than she was. She told me that there was no one there but me and her. One day, a strange phenomenon started happening. People started falling from the sky. They were never clothed, and they always had a petrifying grin on their face. It had just been a few at first, but then hundreds of thousands would fall at a time, destroying cars, homes, and blocking off highways. Strange discoveries were made upon research. They were all human, but they lacked any blood, intestines, or even a heart. No one could explain the hideous grins that they had, or even where they came from. It was a woman in Costa Rica who had made the latest and most disturbing discovery. She had recognized one of the fallen bodies as a long-dead relative, one who died way back when she was a teenager. The more and more identifications were made. Soon, people were picking out their long-dead loved ones amongst the video feeds, cadaver piles, and crematoriums. No one could explain why they were coming back, falling from the sky. Even more distressing, after disposing of the bodies, it wouldn't be long until that same body came plummeting from the sky again. You couldn't get rid of them, no matter what you tried. People were getting killed by the higher volume of fallen bodies, and soon, after burial, they too began to fall. My mother unfortunately was killed when a body landed on her car, crushing her. But the next week, the news reported on a body that had got lodged in an airplane windshield. And on that newscast, I saw my mother's grinning face, the happiest I had ever seen her. They say when hell is full, the dead shall walk the earth. But what about heaven? One evening when I was in my junior year of high school, my mom and dad went out, leaving me home alone. I had a lot of homework to do, so I spent the whole evening sitting at my desk in my bedroom. My parents left the house around 6 p.m. While I was doing my homework, I put on my headphones and listened to really loud music. There was a big storm that night, and my desk was facing the window so I could see the rain and the lightning outside. My parents got back around 11 p.m. When I saw their car drive up, I took off my headphones, and as soon as my mom opened the front door and came inside, I heard her shout my name. "What on earth happened in here?" she demanded in an angry voice. Confused, I ran downstairs. My mom was standing in the hallway with a furious look on her face. She pointed at the floor and yelled, "Was this you?" I looked down and I saw the carpet was covered in muddy footprints. "I have no idea how those got there," I said. "I spent the whole night at my desk doing my homework." I watched as they looked around, and the looks on their face had changed from anger to confusion, and then to fear. We both realized it at the same time. Someone else must have been in the house. So we followed the trail of footprints, trying to make sense of the whole situation. They started at the back door, which we usually left unlocked. Then we noticed something else. The footprints may have started at the back door, but there was no trail of footprints leaving through the back door. All of a sudden we heard something, a really loud pounding noise that echoed throughout the house. Then the sound of the front door being wrenched open and slammed shut again. Wham! We all ran into the garage and locked the door behind us. My mom took out her cell phone and called the police. "Please come quickly," she shouted. "Someone's in our house." After what seemed like hours, a patrol car arrived with 2 police officers, a male and a female. One officer stayed with us in the garage while his partner went through the house, searching it room by room. When she came back, the female officer told us that there was nobody in the house and it was safe to go back in. As we were all breathing a sigh of relief, she asked, Whose bedroom is upstairs on the left? My parents looked at me. Well, that's my bedroom, I told the officer. She asked us to follow her. As we walked through the house, we could see the trail of muddy footprints leading from the back door, through the living room, through the hallway and up the stairs, into my parents' bedroom, and then towards my room. They stopped at my doorway. The female officer pointed at my door, which had been open the whole night, but scrawled on it in black marker was the following: 8:47 p.m. I see you. 8:53 p.m. You forgot to lock the back door. 8:59. You seem focused. 9:24. Turn around. 9:47. Look at me. 10:15. Look at me. 10:37. Look at me. 10:49. Look at me. For more than 2 hours, someone had been standing in my doorway, watching me. To this day, I still shudder to think what would have happened if I had actually turned around.